and I just say it's all about work. That's what I learned with football, and just how to get after it. And I think if you can just learn how to work hard in everything you do, you're going to be in the top 15% of everything you do. You might not be, like I say, I'm not great at a lot of things, but I'm pretty good at everything. Why? Because I'm going to work hard at it.
What's up, beautiful people? Welcome to the Dear Young Athlete podcast, where we talk to coaches and athletes about their journeys and what advice they would have for their younger selves. I'm your host, Jacob Thompson. I'm a speaker, author, and aspiring Paralympian. I've had the privilege and the opportunity to interview over 25 high-level leaders that share their stories and their insights on leadership and how to be successful. We have another great episode coming right up, so let's get into it. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, the man that I'm speaking to. He played college football. He's been a head high school coach for a long time. He's won multiple state championships. He's been the coach of the year among many other awards. Above all that, he is a husband, father, man of God. And I am very excited for a conversation. Without further ado, Mark Esch. Mark, am I saying that right, Esch?
You got it. Yeah, you nailed it.
Amazing. Well, let's dive into it. So, you played in college, you've been a coach, but take us back to the beginning. How did Mark Esch fall in love with playing sports?
Oh, man, going way back. First of all, thanks for having me, JT. Excited to be on and excited to chat a little bit. Well, I grew up in a tiny town in Minnesota, Brownsville, Minnesota. Population at that time, 418 people. They bused us to Caledonia High School to play football and go to school. So that was a little bigger. That town was 2,500. Very small class, very small town, Minnesota. And I fell in love with football as long as I can remember. My first football game, and I tell this story to our kids actually, first football game I remember, I was born in 1977, and the game was in 1980. I was 3 years old. And you're like, how do you remember a game when you were 3 years old? Well, it was the game that Ahmad Rashad had a one-hand catch, Hail Mary catch, to beat the Cleveland Browns in the old stadium and send the Vikings to the playoffs. Kind of that era's Minneapolis Miracle. And my dad and my older brother freaked out. And that's how that got etched into my 3-year-old brain. I just remember the TV was on and some game was going on, and this happened, and they just flipped, and they were screaming and yelling. And then my older brother and my dad, we just played football all the time. My dad taught us the game, and then my older brother loved the game. He was 4.5 years older than me, and we would just go around our town recruiting kids to play football as long as I can remember. Football, basketball, and baseball were our big three that we played all the time. And then football was obviously number one for me. But I tell the kids I played a ton of baseball. I played a ton of basketball growing up. Just football took over when I was in high school. But it was always an outlet for us, no matter what. Mm-hmm. It was always something we could do that was productive, because there was a lot of drinking and smoking and all that type of stuff in the 80s in those towns growing up. And this was a great outlet for us.
Yeah, so football, it sounds like, and maybe the other sports were kind of an anchor for you in high school. So bring us into that high school world. What was football like for you in high school? How did that change the trajectory of your life? And then what did going to college look like for you? Did your parents go to college, or were you first, take us into your world?
Yeah. So It's actually a weird thing. Like I remember being invited to my first party in seventh grade, and I really considered going, and there was going to be alcohol there and girls and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, that'd be so fun. But then there was something inside of me is like, no, you know, you love football, you love basketball at that time, baseball, all the things. It's like if you get caught doing this, it's not going to be good. And really, from that point on, that's what kept me on the straight and narrow, knowing that I had a career in sports, specifically football, kept me on the straight and narrow. I was with a small group that didn't drink or smoke. You know, small town, there's only 200 kids in the school, 225 kids in the school. It wasn't like at a large school where you can kind of fit into whatever niche you are. It was everybody did this. So it kind of gave me a reason to stay clean and stay sober. And that's when I remember seventh grade. And then you kind of fast forward into high school. Football was so important for me. I wanted to play college football, and I wanted to play football as long as I could. You know, obviously I wanted to be a D1 football player that went to the NFL. That did not happen. But that was my dream. And it should be every kid's dream until it's taken away from you. And then, you know what, you need to be ready for that too. I specifically remember going into my junior and senior year, like I think I would have been depressed to the point of, you know, really, really bad depression, but I had this to look forward to. It was, God put it in my life at that time to help me make good decisions. It was something that I was passionate about, specifically football, that kept me from doing all the stuff that was going on in our high school.
You know, a big thing that I would tell to like young people and adults too is to have a vision for your future, and that vision can guide your now. And for you, it was like, hey, I actually know where I'm going. I'm headed somewhere. I want to play football, and that having a vision is so important, because if not, you just do whatever feels good or whatever is comfortable, and then you don't end up where you want to be. So
Absolutely.
I like that you said that. So how'd the college process go?
Well, that was not without bumps as well. So I finished my senior year of high school football. You know, we had a really good year at Caledonia High School. It was the first time in a long time. We won a couple playoff games, so there was some excitement there. But I was really unsure of my next step. I wasn't getting highly recruited. I was a D3 kid, you know, which I love D3 football now. I tell our kids D3 football is the real deal. It's not something you just go and it's a hobby. It's real football. It's high level. So I ended up at UW La Crosse, University of Wisconsin La Crosse. And at that time, it was a super competitive team. They had just won a national championship. And I'll give you an example. They would have about 200 kids out for football, 180 to 200 kids out for football, and they'd have to cut to, I believe it was 110. So I played running back, and we would have 20, 22 running backs, and they would cut all the way down to 10 to 12 running backs. So it was highly competitive. I don't think it's like that now. They manage the roster a little bit differently and some different rules, but I didn't make the team the first year. And I had to fight for everything I got. And then the next year I was on track to make the team, and I got an injury. I severely pulled my hip flexor about 10 days before two-a-days started. And
let's pause there.
Yeah.
Why go out sophomore year? You didn't make it.
I knew I wanted to do it.
And you thought you could do it.
I thought I could do it. I had to prove to myself that I could do it. And determination has always been one of my better qualities. Like, if you want me to do something, you tell me I can't do it, I'm going to try to prove you wrong. And so it was a little bit of that. At that time in my life, I wanted to be a part of the team too. There was a little bit of Like I want to belong to something.
Yeah.
And so that second year I get cut as well, and because I had that injury, and then I finally the next year make the team.
Wow.
And and then after that, I go through 2 days the next year, and I found out I'd have to short credit in order to gain a year of eligibility back. A long story, but I decided to leave football at that point. So I really only played one full year of college football at lacrosse. But this is how it opened up a door for me. So if you pause right there, you're like, this crazy guy went out for football 4 times, played one full year. You know, what's gotten into him? What is this? Well, that last year, the head coach there, who is a legend, the stadium's named after him. He's one of the winningest coaches in NCAA history, Roger Herring. I'm walking down the hallway, and I had a relationship with him because I had worked my butt off to make the team, and he respected that. He's like, Esch, whoever, he was retiring, Esch, whoever they hired to take my spot, you should coach football. And as I look back now, he's like, you should be a student assistant. As I look back now, I think, you know, God put that in me to grind through that hard time. And so I could discover one of my strengths was coaching football. It was quite the opposite experience when I latched on with the new head coach and worked a camp with him. And he immediately, after day one, said, Esch, you have a great future as a football coach.
Wow.
Whereas I was the guy just trying to get on the team, on the football team. When we flipped it to the coaching side, instantly he's like, hey, you have some talent here. You need to use this gift, and I'll help you however I can. He tried to get me some graduate assistantships and stuff like that. But I ended up getting my degree in physical education and health education. And the year after that, I got a teaching job at White Bear Lake, and the football coaches called up to White Bear Lake. They were sure I got a job coaching as well. And I was actually first hired in 2001 as a ninth grade football coach, an assistant ninth grade football coach at White Bear Lake High School. And then one of the varsity coaches ended up leaving during that summer, and I'd worked a camp, and that coach, I think, saw some skills there too. And he offered the varsity position to me when that varsity coach left. So I've been coaching varsity football my entire life. I've never coached lower level football, even when I was just starting out.
Man, I love that you've kind of shared your story there, and I resonate with it a lot. And just similarly, in high school, I worked super hard. Was always in the weight room, and whatever. And I didn't know I had this disease taking away my athleticism, and ended up not starting my senior year, and it was pretty devastating. But my head football coach came to my graduation party and wrote me a letter and said, whenever you want to coach football, give me a call. And, my story, my life took me a different direction because of my health, but I did coach 7 years of high school football. Not because I was the best player. A lot of my friends were great players. They didn't get a letter saying, hey, call me when you want to coach. And I think that's so important for guys that are playing right now. If you could grasp, you don't need to be the best player to show up, to work hard, to have a good attitude, and to be a leader. And that's going to do 1,000,000 times more in your life than being an all-conference player. In 5 years, no one remembers your stats or whatever.
Right.
But you built something that now has impacted your whole life by just showing up and grinding even when it wasn't sexy at all. You were
Mm.
just trying to make the team. Hey, real quick, if you're enjoying the episode, I want to ask you to go on whatever platform you're on and follow and subscribe. Give us a rating and review us and help this podcast reach more people. You can head to the website 1020words.com/DYA. That's TEN20words.com/DYA to learn more about us, check out our merchandise, or figure out how you can have me come speak to your team or program, or potentially be a guest on the podcast. I look forward to connecting with you. Let's get back into the episode.
Yeah, I remember so many times during that few-year process as I was going through it, like, just quit, just stop. That's what your mind tells you, and that's human. That's those thoughts happen, and you just got to fight through them. Because if I wouldn't have fought through that, I don't know where I'd be today. I probably wouldn't be where I'm at today. It'd been a different path, but this totally changed my life. And I didn't even know what I was doing at the time. Like you said, Jacob, I was just grinding it out, trying to reach a goal, not having any idea that the skills that I was learning during that time was going to help me my entire life.
How does it impact now as a coach? You seeing the kid who's not a natural superstar. You know what I mean? Like, do you think your story as a player influences the way you see your players?
For sure. You see value in every kid. It's different because I didn't want to be that running back that was 20th on the list down at UW La Crosse, not getting coached. And it kind of felt like that sometimes because they didn't know who I was right away. And so it's much smaller here where you don't have 20 running backs. But the example or the moral of the story is that every kid matters. You don't know who's going to come back and coach for you. You don't know who, by encouraging that kid to stay out and work hard, how that's affecting his future life, where he goes on and he learned these skills. Even though he wasn't the best player, he learned these skills in high school football that are benefiting him the rest of his life. And that's why I coach. We've kind of worked all the way around, and you might ask this question later, but this is the why behind why I coach is, A, I want to give everybody the best opportunity to maximize their potential. But B, I understand how much, and football's different. Football's a different sport. I don't care if people don't agree with me out there. It's hard. We used to wear shirts at UW La Crosse, one man's sport is another man's hell. And if you don't want to be on a football field, it's not a place to be. Yeah. And it's 100% true. And it teaches different types of qualities, mental toughness, physical toughness, all of this stuff that's going to benefit kids for the rest of their life. So we don't know, going back to your original question there, we don't know if the kid who's fighting for a JV spot and gets in and sticks it out and plays through his senior year, we don't know what type of skills he's learned along that way that's going to benefit him and his wife and his family for the rest of his life. And I think football is different that way. It's just a different sport. And I think that's why our country is so great. We're the only major country in the entire world that is that has this much football. In Europe, it's soccer and great sport too, but it's not football.
Right. I like that idea of, like, there are two muscles that you could build, and one is resilience and perseverance, and one is quitting and giving up. And in the same way, football is not for everyone, and maybe some people need to quit and find something else. Right. But if you're quitting something because it's hard, you know, life is hard, work is hard, marriage is hard, parenting is hard. And which muscle do you want to build, right? Do you want to build the, oh, I give up when it gets hard muscle? Or do you want to build the, no, let's keep fighting? And I do, that's what I love about football too. There's a physical aspect to that. It's teamwork. It's different than fighting because fighting is an individual sport. So
Right.
it's like you're fighting, but you're also relying on all your teammates to do their job, and you want to do your job. You don't want to let them down. It really is a beautiful thing. Tell us a little bit more about your coaching journey. I know you wrote a book, and I'm wondering if you can bring us into kind of what your book was about too, and how that formed you as you went on to become a state champion head coach.
Yeah, we can start with the book and then go into kind of how my career has played out. So, Caledonia High School, when I grew up, it was very much a drinking, smoking, fighting, bullying, or be bullied type of atmosphere. And I think that was not uncommon for the 80s and 90s. So I graduated in 95. I mean, it's a small town. Like, we get into fights. There's a bunch of kids that would go out and drink and smoke weed and all this stuff. And then I kind of go through that phase in my book. That's the first part. It's kind of my personal story. And we get to my senior year where we finally start to believe a little bit. And we were 7-1 in the regular season. We win 2 playoff games. We're 9-2. And it kind of created some excitement. Well, then the head coach, who is a great guy, Mark Franley, he ends up leaving, and Carl Frichte takes over. And any Minnesota high school football coach knows the name Carl Frichte. Carl was my running backs coach and my 9th grade football coach coming up through Caledonia. And Carl just starts to change the culture. It had already kind of begun, and then Carl just took it to a whole new level, to the point where they won 10 out of 13 state championships. They won 71 games in a row. At that time, it was the longest winning streak in the nation. They produced, in a 15-year period of time, they produced 2 Navy SEALs, 2 NFL football players out of this tiny town. And that's not even including the doctors that I interviewed for the book, or business leaders, or people who he was building men. And that's why I was looking at my wife for about 5-6 years. I'm like, I got to write a book about this. And she's like, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you write a book about it? So it was like winter of 2019. I started doing interviews. I interviewed Carl and started to put all this together. And then we published it. We self-published it on Amazon. It's called Rise of the Warriors. And in December of 2020. And really, it's a great chronicle. I mean, we've sold probably about 5,000 copies, 4,000 to 5,000 copies, and we didn't really market it at all. So it still trickles out. It's just a story of rebuilding a culture, and to take it from that toxic culture to that culture that's thriving. What were the steps? What happened? It's a story that really is timeless, because there's coaches out there right now, or players that are in a program that's somewhat toxic, and how do you get it turned around? And so that's the book. And then my coaching career, I mentioned I started as a student assistant at UW La Crosse. Got a chance they had a junior varsity back then, so I got to be the junior varsity offensive coordinator. That was super fun. Work camps and all that type of stuff. And then I became the wide receivers coach at White Bear Lake. It wasn't a glamorous position, but it was a varsity position. And then I had always wanted to coach college football. So I was looking for graduate assistantships, and a lot of people were trying to help me find graduate assistantships. I ended up at the University of South Dakota in Vermillion, and I was a grad assistant down there for 1 year. That was not a great environment at that time. It was not. The culture was not great. Let's just put it that way. And so I had a lot of experiences thinking, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm not going to do what he's doing. I'm not going to do that. And even though it was kind of another miserable year, I learned a lot about what not to do and how to treat people. Mm-hmm. And so I got out of there as soon as I could. I finished my master's degree online and actually traveled to Vermilion to finish it up a little bit. And I became the offensive line coach at Austin High School in Austin, Minnesota, Spam Town. And was offensive line coach there for 3 years under a guy named Tim Herman, who kind of revitalized me. I had such a bad experience at the University of South Dakota at that time that I was thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. But Coach Herman was charismatic. He loved to have fun, but work hard at the same time. He was very open to ideas and a creative offense. And that's kind of where the love of football reignited for me. I did that for 3 years. We weren't super successful there. So when I applied at 29 years old to Mankato West for the head coaching position, I really had no business getting the job. I'd never called plays besides the JV offensive coordinator way back before. And interviewed at Mankato, and I was 29 years old. They offered me the job. I was the number 2 choice, but when you're 29 years old, it doesn't matter that you're the number 2 choice. So I took that job, and then Mankato West was just a huge blessing. We started to win right away. We won over 100 games in 11 years. We won 2 state championships. We were in the semifinals 6 times, and we were just a consistently good football team. And we built a culture that was fun. We worked hard. We had fun. The kids loved each other. They weren't afraid to go out there and play hard. They weren't worried about making mistakes. And we just built that culture where there's certain games you could take the field and you just knew you were going to win. And so that was a lot of fun.
Let me ask you, having won 2 state championships last year, you almost won the 6A title.
Yeah.
Give us the, minute or 2 answer, because I'm sure you could teach a class on it. How do you build a winning culture? I mean, for the listener, whether it's sports, company, your church, whatever it is, what are your kind of pillars of building a winning culture?
There's a few pillars, and you're right. I could talk for a half hour about this. I think the number one thing as you come in as a brand new head coach or a brand new leader is to send a message that I'm going to run through the wall for my people if I have to. I always say you're not going to get a kid to run through a wall for you if you're not willing to run through a wall for them. And they have to have that sense. Nobody's running through walls. It's a figure of speech, right? But when kids know when you're a boss and the people who work for you know that you have their best interest at heart, they are going to run through a wall for you. How do you do that? You build that, in my opinion, you build that through relationships and accountability. There's always a balance here, okay? Relationship, accountability. If you got a leader that's too much relationship and can't hold people accountable, the inmates run the asylum, so to speak, right? You have the behavior will be out of control, all this stuff. You have kids out there cussing on the field and getting personal fouls. If the accountability is too high and the relationship is low, they know you don't care about them. They can see right through it. And a coach doesn't care. He just wants to win. So it's a constant balance. I'm going to build a relationship and I'm going to hold kids accountable. I think holding kids accountable or holding accountability is a measure of love. Like, I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong because I care about your future. I'm not just going to let you sit in the mess that you're creating. I'm going to tell you, this is not the right path. And if you continue on this path, this is what's going to happen. That's accountability. I don't just let them sit there in the mess. And so then they realized coach is holding me accountable, and he was kind of a jerk to me a little bit, but at least I know where I need to go now. And, but I can do that because I have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
That's my 1 minute crash course.
That's great. I almost wonder if I asked you about parenting, if you'd say the same thing.
Parenting? Yeah, 100%. Raising kids.
Just because, that idea of relationship and accountability, you need that as a parent, you need that as a coach, you need that as a boss. And I think that's a great leadership nugget that anyone can apply to their own life. Even your team captains can apply that. What kind of leader are you on the team?
One more thing to add to that, JT, I think this is the secret sauce to that whole deal, is humility. And we think humility is something that you are, right? You are or are not. That's not the case at all. Humility is a lifelong journey.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not a destination. It's a battle to remain humble and not be so humble that your ego is just totally deflated and you don't get anything done. But it's humility is not a process, a lifelong process. It's not a destination.
Man, that's a great word, because I mean, a lot of people think a state championship is the destination, right?
Right.
So how do you win that and then come back next year and start over? I mean, it's a process.
What I noticed about the teams that win consistently is that they have high levels of character. If a team doesn't, our goal is to create a culture of character. That's what we share with our kids every year. And this is what a culture of character looks like, without getting into the hour-long seminar. This is just a snapshot. This is what a culture of character looks like. And if you have a culture of character year in, year out, you can capture consistent winning. You ever see those teams that are good and then they're 3-13, or they're up and down and up and down? That's because they're only good when they have the talent. I think a culture of character, you're consistently good. You understand how to capture and maintain momentum that can carry over year after year after year.
That's very well said. I wanna pivot a little bit, because I know you to be a person of faith. I know you've mentioned here and there, God put me here, God did this. So tell us a little bit about your spiritual journey, from growing up to some impactful, solidifying moments, and then how your faith impacts the way you live now. Hey man, cool shirt. Oh, thank you, man. What is that logo? I've never seen it before. Yeah, it's actually based on 1 Timothy 4:8, which says physical training is good, but training in godliness is better, having value in this life and the next. The 8 is like an infinity, because when you have a relationship with God, it lasts forever. Oh, you believe in Jesus or what? Yeah, bro, I play the game all for God's glory. He changed my life, and I want to do what I can to glorify Him. Is it a brand, or whose logo is that? Yeah, it's actually the theme verse for a cool podcast I listen to called Dear Young Athlete. It's a sports leadership podcast. You should check it out. So where can I get one? Yeah, you just go to their website, 1020words.com/DYA. That's TEN20words inquire.com/DYA. If you use the code DYA20 with all caps, you can get 20% off your first order. They have t-shirts, shorts, hoodies, crew necks, you name it, anything you want. Yeah, man, I mean, I guess I would like to learn more. Oh yeah, man, we got Bible study later with some of the guys. If you want to come check it out. All right, bro. See you later. All right, bro. Peace.
Well, that's quite a story too. Like I grew up Catholic, but I wasn't a Christian. My parents did a great job raising me, and we weren't like the big huggy, I love you family. I had one older brother and me, and that was it. But I knew my parents loved me, and I knew they believed in me, and that created the confidence that I could go out and do things. Right. So I think those are two huge pieces of parenting. Since you were talking about parenting, make sure your kids know you love them and that you believe in them, and you're always going to have their back. I always felt that. So I grew up without a faith, but I always, being in the Catholic Church, we'd go to church every week. I always, deep inside of myself, I always knew there was a God. Like, how did we get here? Like, I think people spend more time on which car to buy or which house to buy. They spend more time on researching this type of stuff than they do actually thinking about how they came to be and how they are in existence. It's either we were created by a creator or we're the biggest cosmic accident. It's not even conceivable that we're a cosmic accident, right? I mean, even if there was nothing, there had to be something to start life. And who created that something? And I always had that feeling inside of me. And I think that's why God put these things in my life, football specifically, to keep me on track and moving forward and give me some type of passion. And then I didn't become what I call a true believer. So I'm going through my life through 26, 27 years old, and I call those my BC days, my before Christ days. And it's a bit of a long story, but when I was 26 years old, I started dating my now wife, Sarah. And we got into an argument. She said she's a Christian and I am not. I was just Catholic because I didn't know who Jesus Christ was. And it doesn't matter. I'm a Christian. I'm Catholic. That's a Christian denomination. Well, she explained to me that to be a Christian, you had to put your trust and your life in the hands of Jesus Christ and believe. And that didn't make sense to me. If you backtrack, a real funny, not funny story, but it's kind of God marks, is when I was at the University of South Dakota, the team pastor, out of all the people in this huge meeting, team meeting, coaches, players, everybody, he looks at me and says, "You look like you lift weights. I want to lift weights with you 3 days a week." He's a team pastor. I'm like, oh, this guy's going to be some weirdo Christian guy. And we end up going to lift weights 3 days a week that whole year, and he didn't bring up the faith at all. But he was witnessing to me the entire time. It planted a seed in me, like, oh, this isn't so weird. And then I started researching. Then my wife had that conversation with my wife. And then I remember she took a job in Iowa, and I was visiting her, and I went to Barnes & Noble and bought this book, and I was reading it. It's about end times. So I've always been intrigued by end of days. And that's where I remember the prayer of salvation. It was in that book. And I prayed that prayer of salvation. I invited Jesus to take me over. I gave my life to Christ, and I changed instantly. Because the piece that I left out in the original story was after my high school football career was over and I started floundering a little bit, I did start drinking. And I was a partier, and I was getting into trouble here and there. And so I was on this different path throughout college. You wouldn't have known it just by talking to me. But when I was 27 years old, I remember praying that prayer of salvation, and everything changed for me. Before, it was all about winning. I would cuss when I coached, and I wasn't being a good example. Everything changed. Within a couple months, I stopped drinking. I changed how I operated. I went back to Austin High School. I started a Fellowship of Christian Athletes group. And from that point on, like, I've been a Christianity. I always tell people this. you can't separate who you are from being a coach. If you're an atheist and you're a coach, that's fine. That's going to go with you. That's going to be part of who you are. If you're Jewish and you're a football coach or any type of coach, that impacts who you are as a coach. I'm a Christian and I'm a coach. That impacts how I coach. So Christianity says, like, it doesn't matter. Nothing in the football world really matters. But still at the same time, it matters for eternity because I'm impacting kids. And so it became less about winning and more about relationship and more about building a culture that was high character, that these kids were going to go out and do great things. And I might have just been a small part of that in their lives. But I'm investing, and I always keep it like, I always tell, I don't preach any religion when I coach football, right? And this is a personal conversation we're having. I don't preach any religion, but those Christian qualities go with me.
Yeah.
And, so it changed everything for me.
Well, I think there's something important. If we go back to earlier, we talked about having a vision, having a purpose, and how that keeps you going in the right direction. And football or school or whatever your dream is, that can be a really good part of that. But it can't be all it is, right? Because whether you play in college, whether you play pro, it doesn't matter if you have the best career ever. It ends, and then if that's the only thing that you have put your hope in, then what do you do? And I think you hit that on the head. You, like, when you were done playing, you started to get lost because you didn't have the North Star that football was.
Right.
But when God is your North Star, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You could be the head coach, you could be the president, you could be the garbage man, you could be in prison, but you still have a hope, a vision, a purpose, and a direction when you have that faith in Jesus. And I think that's a great thing. What if you can tell us, just like, when you think about your players coming from all different walks of life, different spiritual influences, what would you want to say to them about your faith or who Jesus is or why they should care?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, I'm not going to pound anything down anybody's throat, right? Like, it's a choice. And I think every individual has to look into that very first question I asked: why are you here and what's my purpose? And that's the very first question you have to ask. And when I did that, I found that God created me specifically to serve him, and he sent his son for multiple reasons, right? To serve as an example of how to live a life, to how to live in humility, how to treat other people that can't do anything for you. And then ultimately, he was sacrificed, he was crucified to bring us to God, to be the gap between us and God, to create forgiveness of sins, because we could never live a perfect life, and he did. And that, when you understand that, that's everything. So if kids are listening, I'm like, you have to research this for yourself. It can't be, I believe, because Coach Esch or JT told me that this was the thing that needed to be done. You have to go through and have your own experience. And I think that's why you see a lot of kids that grow up Christian get a bad taste in their mouth about what it truly is, and maybe fall away and then hopefully come back. But you have to put it to the fire. And when I put Christianity to the fire, it passed the test. I read a lot of books like Lee Strobel, Case for a Creator, A Case for Christ, great books that give you a ton of evidence. I'm a lot of an evidence guy, right? And then to me, more evidence now that I'm on that track is I was changed immediately. Like nothing else could have done that. Like I was always into girls. I was into looking at the wrong things on the internet. I was into alcohol, and that changed immediately. Like that was the most convincing thing for me. Like what just happened to me? And not everybody has an experience like that. Like I look at my daughters, they've grown up as believers, and hopefully they don't have that part of their life where they fall away, but they won't know what that is like to have all that debt canceled and to be forgiven for all the stuff. And I think that's huge. And I think kids need to understand and really look into what's this Christianity thing all about. And it's your decision.
Yeah. No, I love that. Like, if I can relate it back to football, it's like we can tell you what workouts to do to get stronger and more athletic, and we can tell you what drills to do to become more skilled. But ultimately, we can't do it for you. And that was sometimes, as a coach, for me, it was frustrating because it was like feeling like players weren't giving it their all. And it's like, well, I can't do it for you. But similarly, yeah, I mean, you need to make your own decision, and I can't make it for you. And that actually is very freeing because, like you said about that pastor that worked out with you, you know, he's just being present and being who he is, and it's impacting you even if you don't know it. And yeah, my hope is if anyone is listening, they're curious enough to even look into it and consider, why are you here? What do you believe? What's your purpose? So if I can transition back to a little bit about sports and life. I always say, growing up, I thought life was all about sports. I know now sports are all about life. There are so many lessons in sports in the game of football. If you could pick one and kind of unpack like one lesson from football that has impacted your life, what would that be, and how have you seen it in your life?
For me, and I think it's different for everybody, right? For me, it's work. Like, I remember I was in eighth grade. I was riding with my parents, and my mom and dad were in front, and I was in back. And I said, you know what? I think if you work harder than everybody else, your chances of success increase tremendously. Now, this is a 13, 14-year-old kid saying this. And I just remember my dad looking in the rearview mirror and smiling. Like, how great was it for him to probably hear his son say that? So my dad was a hard worker, is a hard worker, still working in his mid-70s. And I just think I've carried that with me in everything. Like, you will not outwork me, whether it's in football or at home. Like, I'm always looking to do work around the house, which I'm sure my wife loves. She probably wants me to do more, but I'm setting an example for our kids, and I'm going to go out and work. And we used to own a little side business, me and my wife, and we'd outwork people, and it made it successful. And I just say it's all about work. That's what I learned with football. Just how to get after it. And I think if you can just learn how to work hard in everything you do, you're going to be in the top 15% of everything you do. You might not be like I say I'm not great at a lot of things, but I'm pretty good at everything. Why? Because I'm going to work hard at it.
Mm,
Even
yeah.
weaknesses. I'm going to work hard at my weaknesses.
Oh, yeah, that's good. I remember, when you're going into ninth grade, you start weight training at the high school. And I remember that second day you show up, you're sore. You've never lifted weights before. And I remember distinctly my coach saying, "Oh, you guys are sore. You can't get that playing video games." And for some reason, that stuck with me my whole life. And even before this, I was thinking about that because I'm training, trying to go to the Paralympics, and so I was rock climbing today. And I noticed both of my shoes have these holes in them. And I had this like satisfaction and was brought back to that moment. Like, you can't get holes in your shoes by laying on the couch. Um, so I love that, like, putting in the work. And then the beautiful thing is seeing your work pay off. I mean, if you won a football game, but you didn't put in the work of the weight room, the 2 days, the film, how much less satisfying would that be? But it feels so good because you know everything that went into it. As we come to a close, we have a tradition. This podcast is called Dear Young Athlete. So every guest asks you to complete this statement, Dear Young Athlete, blank. What would you say to your players and to the younger Mark?
Wow. Dear young athlete, my advice to you is to work as hard as you can, enjoy the time that you have right now, and not lose vision of, I wish I would have had my faith when I was your age, and encourage you to reach out and investigate why you're here and what your purpose on this earth is, and then just go to work.
Couldn't have said it better. That's great. And just as we finish, do you have any last words, final thoughts as we close?
Yeah, I mean, I just appreciate you getting me on here and having an opportunity to talk about life and not just faith, but football and work ethic and all the things that make people better. It's just a passion of mine, and I love to talk about it. So I appreciate you for putting this podcast on and bringing me on.
Awesome. Well, the pleasure is all mine. Thank you for taking time, jumping on here. If anyone is still listening, thank you for listening, and I hope you can take some of these insights and apply them in your own life. That's all. Peace. And there you have it. One more episode in the books. Thank you so much for listening. As a reminder, make sure you subscribe in whatever platform you're on, that you leave a comment and rate and review. And I want to personally thank you for doing that. And I will see you in the next episode. Peace.